Pakistan's economy is collapsing, but its elite are not. And the Pakistan Army is certainly not. While ordinary citizens struggle for food and fuel, the generals live very well. This is Quick Take, your quick guide. I am Smita Prakash. Pakistan is a country of more than 250 million people, running on a broken economic model. For decades, it survived on foreign loans, billions in bailouts, and borrowed time. There were no serious reforms, only more debt, and then panic when the bills came. Inflation today is high, foreign reserves are low, millions slip into poverty, factories shut, jobs vanish, but one group remains untouched: Pakistan's military elite. They control a shadow economy known as Millibus, meaning military business. Real estate, banks, housing colonies, cement, fertilizer, even bakeries. Almost every sector has some army-controlled entity sitting quietly at the top. Reports say military entities hold nearly 12% of Pakistan's land, much of it prime. The Pandora Papers showed how offshore wealth moved quietly abroad while the country went deeper into crisis. Defense spending keeps rising. This year, it grew by 20%. At face value, 1 in 7 rupees goes to Pakistani defense, and the real number is likely higher once hidden pensions and perks are included. Many senior officers live abroad. Some settle in Dubai, London, or Virginia in the US. You've seen the videos, ex-generals strolling through London with the confidence of men who know that the IMF will pick up their bill again. Their children study abroad and rarely return to a country their parents shape. And now, the political side. Pakistan's parliament has passed the 27th Amendment abolishing the old post of Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee CJCSC and creating the unified CDF role. The amendment vests all three services, Army, Navy, Air Force, under a single commander, now Asim Munir. Field Marshal Munir now has sweeping powers and lifetime immunity. He cannot be arrested, prosecuted, or questioned. Supporters call it clarity, critics call it autocracy. In reality, it consolidates military power fully over the state. Legal checks and balances, by which one means civil, military, judiciary, executive, provincial autonomy, they've been dramatically weakened. Without doubt, it is a constitutional coup, moving Pakistan decisively towards authoritarian rule. Investors understand what this means. Donors, lenders, and foreign investors place a premium on democratic governance, rule of law, and judicial independence. The constitutional shift away from these ideals may deter Western investment or assistance. No one trusts a system where governments have no authority, other than regimes which love dealing with the military dictators while they preach lessons on democracy. Meanwhile, anger in Pakistan is rising. In Balochistan, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in cities hit by blackouts and joblessness. Even within the security forces, the morale is slipping. Civilian government matters only insofar as it accords legitimacy. But the real levers of power, which used to be defense, national security, constitutional oversight, all those are now off limits for civilian control. In Pakistan, people serve the military, not the other way around. And until that changes, the story remains the same. The Pakistani Republic continues to unravel.